Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing another book haul. I'm sorry I lied to you. This is not the part 2 of my DC book haul. Part of my voice, it's doing weird things. It doesn't like me. Basically what happened was I encountered a library book sale. All the books were $1, so I wound up getting 25 books and 2 extra things. So I decided that I wanted to introduce them to you. I did film this video the day I got it, but I looked at the footage and the lighting was really weird. The sun was doing weird things. It was just casting all these really weird shadows. So I decided to scrap that footage and just basically refilm it. And it's been a little bit of time since then because I just didn't really have any time to film where I was alone in private, where I felt comfortable. So today is the day we're going to film this, and I'm really excited to show you all of my books. I'd like to give a disclaimer before the real video starts, and that I cannot decode things, so I will be pronouncing things wrong. That was not done intentionally. That is just something that is unavoidable, and I can do nothing about it. I've tried. I really have. In no particular order, we're going to start off with Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I've not read this book. I decided to pick this up because I saw a video that Dominic Noble made comparing this book to its movie, and I thought the premise was really interesting, plus it's a classic. This edition looks like it was donated to the library. It just has that very feel of a book that you had to read in high school, and there's writing in it and highlighting. So these books aren't the best quality, but they're all $1, so in my opinion, worth it. And from what I know, the main character, who's never named in the novel, basically marries this guy who had this dead wife, Rebecca. It's basically about how Rebecca's shadow looms over her whole relationship slash time with her new husband. I just thought this was interesting, and it's a classic, and I'm trying to up my classic game. This does have an audiobook, so I'm super stoked about that. So the next book that I wanted to talk about is The Flags of Our Fathers by James Bradley with Ron Powers, and this is, it says soon to be a motion picture. By the time that I got this book, there has been a motion picture or a movie. I have seen the movie, but I saw it so many years ago, and this basically tells the story of this picture that is on the cover. It's about climbing the hill of Iwo Jima. From what I remember from the movie is that these aren't the actual people to make it up the hill and plant the flag first. They just ran up the hill to re-put up the flag once it had been taken down. I think it'll be really interesting. I don't really remember anything from the movie because I was so young when I did see it. I'm kind of interested to get a little insight into the Pacific side of the conflict of World War I, and I think it's a shame that we don't talk about that more in history class, because the Pacific side is where primarily Americans fought. The Atlantic slash European side is just, we just didn't have as much influence there. This does have an audiobook. The next book I have to show you is Doctor Who, The Glamour Case by Gary Russell. If you do not know, I am a total weirdo and nerd, hence why I call you guys weirdos. And I really like Doctor Who, so when I saw this at the library book sale, I was like, well, let's up my Doctor Who collection and add to it. I actually have a Doctor Who blanket that I love, and it's really fuzzy and it keeps me warm. I just saw it and I was like, ooh, this looks really interesting. Matt Smith is not my favorite doctor, but it's Doctor Who, right? And where can you go wrong? I do love Amy and Rory. They're one of my favorite companions, not my favorite, but they're up there. This also does have an audiobook, which is really nice. Continuing with the trend of getting classics, I picked up Dracula by Bram Stoker. Vampires are so iconic in today's world. They're everywhere, from Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer to Twilight, and I just kind of wanted to see like what the OG book was. This is it. So I think it's about a man who like goes to Count Dracula's like palace and like has to like escape it or something. I don't know. I believe it's written in sort of an alternative format, so it's kind of like a mix of journal entries, which I think I will like. It is kind of beat up, but I have a copy now and I can read it, and this also does have an audiobook, which makes me happy. I'm really outing myself as a nerd today. So next I wanted to show you is Star Trek Deep Space Nine Valhalla by Nathan Archer. This is the 10th book in the series, but it's the one they had. I don't really care. I really love Star Trek. Deep Space Nine is my favorite iteration of Star Trek. If you don't believe me, I have a Star Trek lanyard right here that my mom bought me and one of my best friends before we went to college. So I would not lie about the fact that I'm fucking weird, but don't believe me if you want, but whatever. I'm really not sure what this book is about other than it involves the characters from Deep Space Nine, and I really love these characters. Kira Nerys, pictured here, is one of my favorites. I love her. I have lots of feelings when it comes to her. I think this talks about the Dominion War. Oh wait. Oh crap. No, no. Just reading the blurb, and it seems that Cardassian wants to retake Bajor. No, that's not okay. I thought we got over this. Anyway, this I don't think has an audiobook. I know some of the other books in the series do, but I couldn't find one on Audible and I couldn't find one anywhere else, so I think I will have to read this with my eyeballs. The book that I want to show you is Male and Female, The Study of Sexes in a Changing World by Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead is a really famous anthropologist, and I felt really ashamed that I didn't have a book by her. How could you not expect me to not pick up an anthropology book when I bought 25 books at a library book sale? So, do that, you don't know me. This basically talks about sexes in the modern world, specifically focusing on Pacific Islanders. I'm just really excited to see what this is about, especially because Margaret Mead is so famous within the anthropology community, and this sadly does not have an audiobook. That tends to be a trend with anthropology books, which is a damn shame, in my very humble opinion. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. So this is a book that I just wanted to get my hands on, especially because of its cultural impact that it's had in the world. I know that might seem weird, but there's a giant phenomenon that happened in America, which is largely overfabricated. Also in, I believe, Argentina, this really did cause a panic, or at least the radio drama. They decided to create another radio drama in Argentina, and it just caused chaos. I think some people died. There's a whole Radiolab episode about it that you should check out too. I'll leave it in the description if I can find it. Kind of wanted to pick up the book that inspired it all, plus it's also considered a classic, so yeah. I know what's going to happen in this book. I do, but I still wanted to get it. This does have an audiobook. The next book is 127 Hours Between a Rock and a Hard Place by Aaron Raselton. And so this book is basically about Aaron Raselton being stuck literally between a rock and a hard place when he goes out hiking and gets his arm trapped. The book details how he survived for 127 hours. I think he eventually saws off his arm. I don't think that's really spoiler in the blurb here. This was also made into a movie. I did not see the movie, but I thought it was a really interesting concept. And when I saw this at the library book sale, I was like, fuck it, it's $1, why not? I have nothing to lose. Well, my back did, since I had to carry around 25 books. This also does have an audiobook. I love it when things have audiobooks. It's the best. Flowers for Algernon by Danielle Keyes. I had to read a version of this in 8th grade, but it was a really condensed version. It was basically like a short story. And I was always curious to read the full story to understand what happened. I didn't really get a chance to until now. I'm actually kind of really upset because the extended English class in 8th grade got to read the entirety of this book, and I didn't. A little bit salty about my English classes growing up, and lots of ableist issues that were happening at the time. I don't want to get into it now. It's too... Anyway, I'm just kind of excited to read this. I know what happens. I know, at least in my opinion, it's sad. And it's something that this also does have an audiobook. The next book I have to show you is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I've read this book multiple times. I really like it. Well, I read this a lot in middle school, and I didn't have a copy of it. We did actually have to read this in 7th grade for school. I had read it before then and really liked it, and I still like it. I haven't read it since middle school, I don't think, but I really like the book. I really like the story. This follows a boy named Ponyboy and his group of friends, and they're in this kind of group called the Greasers, and it just follows them and the trouble that they get into. And when I read it, it was just really emotionally powerful, and I wanted to have a copy for myself for my bookshelves. It's been turned into a play. My high school did the play, and we saw it. It was kind of lackluster, but this does have an audiobook. I don't really know what else to say about this other than I really liked it, and that's why I picked it up, because it was only for $1. The next book I want to show you is Evita, The Real Life of Eva Perón by Nicholas Fraser and Marisa Navarro. And this basically tells the story of, you guessed it, Evita. I've been really interested in Evita ever since I've started listening to the musical, Evita. It's one of the few Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals that I don't cringe at occasionally. I'm just very curious to see the true story and not the musical interpretation, but I did pick this up because of the musical Evita and because I like that musical. Evita is a very, very interesting person. This does have an audiobook. It took some digging, but I did find an audiobook for it, so yay. I want to show you is Bridges of Madison County by Robert James Walter. This is a fiction book, and I got this because, you guessed it, because of the musical. I've listened to a few of the musical songs. I've not listened to everything, but what I've heard, and it's really beautiful. So when I saw this at the library book sale, I was like, yeah, I want to get the full story so that when I do sit down and listen to the entire soundtrack, watch it, I have context for what's going on. So this is basically about this woman who married this photographer during World War II, and she's from Italy, and they moved to Iowa, and it's about her life dealing with sort of the mundanity and the fact that she isn't living her dreams the way she thought she would. This also does have an audiobook. The next book I want to show you is Night by Elie Wiesel. This is a book I did have to read in high school, and I liked it so much that I wanted to get a copy of it for myself. And by high school, we weren't allowed to keep any of the books we read, and I liked a lot of them, so I recently decided to buy them if I see them for a reasonable price, and this was $1. If you don't know, this tells Elie Wiesel's story of his time during the Holocaust, and I don't think I will be rereading this soon because I have a very hard time dealing with that topic. It's very personal. I'm just not emotionally in a state where I could read something like this. I'm working on it, but I'm not there yet. But I saw this, I'm going to pick it up so I could have it so that when I am eventually ready to read this again, I can. This does have an audiobook. I don't remember if I read it in high school with an audiobook or not. This next book is called The Good Women of China, Hidden Voices by Xin Ran. I can't speak Chinese. This basically details the account of the author ran a radio show in China during the 80s when China was opening up its borders again. This radio show blew up, and she got all of these calls from all of these women all over, and this book is essentially tells those stories, which I think this will be really, really interesting. And the chapter titles have the Chinese character for women there, which I thought that was cool. This doesn't have an audiobook, sadly, but I think it'll be really, really interesting, and I'm trying to up my collection of Chinese literature, or at least books on China. And yeah, I'm excited to add this. This next book I have to show you is The Fabric of the Cosmos, Space, Time, and the Texture of Reality by Brian Greene. It basically talks a lot about science and reality, the universe, and you will notice in my next haul video that I've picked up a lot of nonfiction science books. I typically don't go for that. I do more of the history side or in social science side, but there's been a few books that I've read recently that has got more into the science side of nonfiction. So when I saw this, I was like, well, let's give this a try. I mean, it's only $1. There's not a lot for me to lose if I don't wind up liking this book. I'm very interested to see what it has to say, because this does have an audiobook, which is really awesome for me. The next book that I have to show you is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I really like this book. I read this in my senior year of high school, and I liked it a lot, and I wanted my own copy. Unfortunately, this freaking sticker, it doesn't come off. It literally was printed onto the book. In my high school literature class, we had to watch the movie interpretations by Kenneth Branagh, Frankenstein's, and oh boy, did he pick up on the incestuous undertones in this book, and I thought that was a really awesome interpretation. I don't think incest is good. Don't do incest. That's not cool. Also have an audiobook. The next book I'm going to show you is Little Princes, One Man's Promise to Bring Home the Lost Children of Nepal by Conor Grennan. And this book tells the story about how the author went on this year-long journey just traveling the world, and then he was volunteering at this orphanage in Nepal, I believe, and turns out that the children there weren't orphans. And so these children were basically, the families sent them away. The children were never returned to their parents. So it's a story about how he has tried to get these children back to their parents and reunite them again, and that's all I kind of want to read into it, and it's just very interesting to me. And this does have an audiobook. The kids look very cute on the cover, so that's enough for me to pick up a book. Interesting premise and cute kids on covers. Wow, very low bar. Next book I want to show you is Water for Elephants by Sarah Gruen. It is a movie. I've seen the movie, did not like the movie. It's not as good as the book. Read the book. I liked this book a lot. And I've read the audiobook a lot of times. I just like the story. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a really cool look into circus life, even though it is fiction. I really like the portrayal of Jacob when he's an old man. I find him to be extremely entertaining. He's just so cranky, and I love it. And I like the way it ends. I like the way it's told, that it's not linear. I just wanted an actual hard copy, and I saw it, and I was just like, sold. I got it. It's $1. The next book that I want to talk about is Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. So I picked this up, and as I was checking out, I already have a copy of Gulliver's Travels, but that's okay. This is just a dog. Follows this guy named Gulliver, and he goes to all of these really weird places. Like, there's a land of giants. I think there's like a part where he goes to the moon, and there's a land of little people, as you see. I think there have been a few movies made about this. I'm excited to read the actual book, and this does have an audiobook, so that will help significantly. This next book I want to show you is Quiet, the Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And I saw some booktuber make a video about this, and I think I have a copy of this at my home, but it's one of my parents' copies. And I've never read it. I don't think my parents have read it. It's in very good condition. I kind of like this style of nonfiction. It's not always my favorite to pick up, but I read Grit, and that was a good one. So I figured I would take a look at this one, because it doesn't exactly cover the same material, but it's the same type of nonfiction, if that makes any sense. So yeah, this does have an audiobook, and I'm excited to read it. Paradise Lost by John Milton. And I picked this up because I was talking about it with one of my friends. I've not read this before, but we were talking about the Divine Comedy and talking about our opinions on it. And I could talk about those later. I do have feelings about the Divine Comedy. And they were like, oh, have you read Paradise Lost? I was like, no, I haven't. And then I saw it, like, literally the same day, or like the next day. And I was like, pfft, I'm going to get it so that I have a copy so that I can read it for future notice. And this does have an audiobook, so I'm really excited. I'm excited to see this. I kind of like books sort of like this. I think Good Omens is also kind of a similar book in terms of taking a Bible story, reimagining it. I find them very entertaining and turning it more, and just delving into the mythology of the Bible and pulling stories out of that, which I find interesting. I've not read Good Omens. I want to. I've watched the Amazon Prime series, and I liked that. Next book I want to talk about is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. This is a thick book. I think it's like, I'll read you the major conflict. So it's about Anna struggles between her passion for Vronsky and her desire for independence on one hand, and her marital duty, social convention, and maternal love on the other. Levin struggles to define his own identity and reach an understanding of faith in an alienating and confusing world. This is a classic. I've been wanting to get my hands on classics. I picked this up at the library book sale. because I couldn't find War and Peace, and I was like, well, Anna Karenina, I've seen its name thrown out a lot. Just kind of been curious about major Russian literature like this. This does have an audiobook, so I'm excited. The next book I want to talk about is The Big Short, Inside the Doomsday Machine by Michael Lewis. This is about the housing bubble that happened in 2008. And I figured I'd pick this up because I saw the movie, I liked the movie, I would like to know more about the actual specific details. And I also thought it was really interesting because I lived through this. Luckily, it's a part of history that I've lived through to the point where I can remember it. And I just think it would be really interesting to get a more in-depth look about what the frick happened. It was kind of crazy. This does have an audiobook. I actually do have the audio. We'll see when I get around to it. So many books. This next book is the last book I have to show you. It is also a thick boy, and that is Don Quixote by Miguel Cervantes. And my Spanish literature class, we had to read sections of Don Quixote for the AP Spanish literature test, and we read a snippet from Abriendo Puertas, which is just kind of like the big Spanish text prep. I plan to do videos about that in the future. I just don't have it with. I read parts of it in Spanish. I really like the musical Man of La Mancha. They didn't have the Spanish translation. If they had had it in Spanish, I would have got it, but they had it in English. So if you want to see me do like a comparison of like the English version and the Spanish version that I read, or the original Spanish, I'd be down. I'd have to reread it, and you'd have to wait a little while for me to do that because I actually have to get my hands on it. It is 2 books, but I think commonly most people just smush the 2 books into 1 book. I'm just really curious to see how the English version compares to the Spanish version. This does have an audiobook, so if you want to know the page count, 942. I did get 2 more things at my book haul, and one of those is the entire Blu-ray edition of Avatar: The Last Airbender. You know, this guy, this is some good shit. I love this TV show. I think it is the best thing Nickelodeon has ever made. Fight me, I will fight you on this. SpongeBob does not hold a candle to Avatar. Anyway, but I really love this. You can't tell, this boy right here, it's Appa. We love this. When I saw this, I had to get it because you will be really happy when I tell you the price of everything. The very last thing I got at the library book sale was War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. This is the audiobook. This thing is 48 CDs. I've been wanting to get my hands on War and Peace ever since I saw the musical Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. Love the music. Some of the lyrics are literally taken directly from War and Peace, and I've just been wanting to read this so badly that when it was pointed out to me that there was an audiobook of this, I was like, I have to get this, and I'm very grateful that I did. The musical Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 only covers about 70 pages. This is more than 70 pages. So I'm really excited to see what happens to the characters and where they go and where they grow and what happens. I'm just really excited that I have a version of War and Peace, and I can't wait to get an actual hard copy. This is it for the library book haul that I got in DC. I got 27 things, and it cost me a grand total of $30. I am astonished, especially because they normally charge about $1 per CD, and Avatar plus War and Peace, that is a heck more than $5. It's about 57 CDs in total, and they only charged me $5. So I was just incredibly grateful for the library, and I would have paid more, but the librarians just decided to not do that. Thank you so much for sticking around. What do? Subscribe, like, comment, maybe? I don't know. Tell me what you want me to read. Next week, I believe I am doing a July wrap-up. I'm gonna go back to reading the book that I was reading, or take a nap or something. What the fuck is it? Oh, ow. Damn it, you weren't supposed to see that book. I don't want a book to hit me on the head. That's not fun.